Today's guest brings a wealth of experience from some of the most complex and high-stakes environments in the world. Christopher Brewer is a veteran whose career has taken him from the front lines to the strategic boardrooms of international security. A former Ranger Battalion NCO and Special Forces officer, Christopher has served in pivotal roles across Afghanistan, the United Arab Emirates, and Nigeria. His expertise spans not only elite military service, but also specialized training, strategic consulting, and advisory roles with organizations like the U.S. Department of State and Presidential Guard units. With a unique blend of hands-on operational experience and high-level security insight, Christopher Brewer offers a perspective few can match. It's an honor to have him join us today. How's it going, Chris? I am excited for this interview.
Oh, I appreciate the invitation. Glad to have the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. So, as your intro suggests, you're a man of many talents and a vast, wide knowledge. You're also an author and doing some amazing things. So let's dig into the very beginning. What brought you to the military?
You could say birth. My old man was in the military.
Yep.
I was an army brat growing up. We moved every year in the middle of the school year. So I was always the new kid in school. Learned how to fight early on. And when it came time to leave the house, went to Georgia military college at that time. Got bored with school and dropped out, and didn't drop out initially. I went to 20th Special Forces National Guard to help pay the bills. Caught the bug, and when the 1st Ranger Battalion started to reactivate in 1974, I said, enough of the school book. I'm going for the real thing, and enlisted as a PFC for the 1st Ranger Battalion.
Wow. So absolutely. You know, my dad and my uncle was both in the Army. That's what brought me to the Army. I didn't even talk to any other recruiters. And so I followed the same footsteps, followed my dad and my uncle, adored. That's what brought me there. So I get it. You know, your heritage is a big part of it. So what made you decide Ranger?
Well, North Georgia at that time was predominantly male military school, and we were just down the road from the Mountain Ranger camp. So Ranger had a big influence on everything we did. Everybody wanted to become a Ranger, go to Ranger school. And then when the Ranger Bat opened up, that just seemed to be a natural transition. It was brand new. You could only go there if you had some prior experience at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And since I'd been through basic and 91 Bravo medic AIT at that point in time with the National Guard, they looked at my record and said, okay, you're good enough. You can come on down. But being young and foolish and in love with all things Ranger and Ranger being infantry, I said, well, I want to go to 11 Bravo at Fort Polk AIT before I show up. I want to be an infantryman. And I was granted the privilege of going back to Fort Polk, Louisiana to go through 11 Bravo en route to jump school before I got to the Ranger Bat.
Okay. Absolutely. So was you with the 75th there at Hunter? Is that where you ended up at?
No, we started out at Fort Stewart. They were organized at Fort Benning, and then in July of 74, they jumped into Taylor Creek Drop Zone. Originally, we were billeted at Fort Stewart. I joined up with them at the activation test after they'd been training during the summer. In the middle of the activation test, as a matter of fact, straight out of jump school. That was an experience. That's in the book. And we stayed there for our first 3 years while they were trying to figure out what a Ranger Battalion can do and can't do and what they're going to do with us. And we had the worldwide tour. When we got off Fort Stewart, we went to Germany and Panama and the North Slope of Alaska in February, one right after the other. That was an interesting experience. And it was only later that they moved out to Hunter Army Airfield.
Okay. Yeah. When I was there from 2000 to 2010, all at 3rd Bat there at Hunter. Mm-hmm. And so Yeah, I mean, best time of my career. So I can imagine the transition from you from going from regular infantry to Ranger was probably a step up, and that bigger budget and better training and better schooling and everything else that tends to come with the special ops community. It's an amazing gift that very few get to try.
See, but this was 1974. When they got started at Fort Benning, they had butt packs and had to put rocks and sand in them to ruck with. We
Oh,
had standard issue equipment. We had one set of night vision devices for the platoon. Uh, we were straight old regular infantry. The only difference is we walked a lot farther, faster, and did things a lot harder. It was only later that they started to get the cool stuff.
yeah, yeah. Life was definitely different in 2000 for them. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
So let's get into transitioning into SF. That's a natural progression for a lot of tabbed individuals. They look to move up into the tiers. What was it that brought you there?
I stayed with the bat for 3 years, and then we had a couple of good, really good battalion commanders, great leadership, but then all the guys started to go out because General Abrams' vision was that they're going to train up this battalion and they were going to go forth and populate the rest of the Army to try and bring the standards up. The Army had a lot of problems in 1974, right after Vietnam. So all the hard chargers were starting to move out. At one point in time, I got out of Ranger School, came back. I was promoted to E5 in Ranger School. Went to the weapons platoon and B company. Uh, not even a month after I got there, well, I started out, they put me in as a section leader, as a brand new E5. And not even 2 months after I got there, I wound up being the platoon sergeant because I had 1 month time and grade over the other E5 who'd come back to the mortar squad. And about 2, 3 months after that, I wound up being the platoon leader because I was one of 2 NCOs left in the platoon. So that was kind of a tough period there. Standards start to drop. There's a lot of confusion. I got out of the Army for a little less than a year. Went to California, San Francisco, working as bodyguard and other stuff. That convinced me I'd rather be in the Army. So I reenlisted, but rather than go back to the battalion, I didn't know they were already on the upswing. They had a great new battalion commander came in. He got things going. That's when all the new stuff and new tactics started to roll in. But I missed that because I went to the 509th in Italy.
Okay.
509th in Italy, I got a chance to go up to Bottolz, the 1st to 10th. They had something called platoon confidence training. Loved that. Loved Bad Tolz. Really got hooked on SF, working out with those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came time for reenlistment, reenlisted for Fort Benning, thinking that go to the Ranger Department as an instructor, thinking that, well, I'll either go back to the bat, see what they're doing, or I'll volunteer for SF. And when I got there, the sergeant major looked me in the eye and said, "Welcome, boy. Buy yourself a house. You'll be here for the rest of your career." Now, I had about 8, 9 years in at that time, just been picked up for E7. Oh, hell no, Sergeant Major. I'll do my instructor time here, and then I'm going to go back to the bat. And he said, nah, that ain't going to happen. You're an E7 now. There's about a 2, 3 year waiting list for E7s. And since you're here at Fort Benning, you're going to get picked up for drill sergeant. We're critically short of drill sergeants, and it's a 5-year stabilized tour. So you'll be here for 2 years. Then you get picked up for drill. 5 years there. That'll give you 15. You come on back here. We'll take you here for 2 years, maybe put you in the airborne department for a year or two. You have your 20, so then you can retire. And I would have gone to be a drill sergeant for a year or two. I mean, that is, they're important. They're necessary for the Army. I'd have done my part. Not 5 years.
Yeah.
No way in hell. So I said, nope, I ain't doing it. I'm going to go to SF if I can't go to battalion. And he laughed at me again. I said, nope. This was 1978, I think. And no, it was 1980, 80 or 81. And he said, now we're getting rid of SF. The Army, all the higher ups had decided all the snake eaters were a pain in their ass. You're just going to get rid of them entirely. And you know how that turned out.
Yeah.
But there was no way anyone was going to approve an application for Special Forces training out of Fort Benning. Drill sergeant took priority.
Yeah.
So I committed the ultimate act of betrayal to the NCO Corps, and I volunteered for OCS. Only thing that took priority.
Yeah.
And went to OCS. First, I went to the NCO Advanced Course. Sergeant Major recommended that. He was right. He said, if it don't work out and you got to come back and you turn down the advanced course, you're going to regret it. So go do that. You want to go on to OCS, go on ahead. So went to the NCO advanced course, then went to OCS, went right back to the same classes we just had in the NCO advanced course, same instructors. Got out of that, went to IOBC, same classes again, same instructors. I was starting to shout out the punchline to the jokes before the instructor could even get to it. And then from there, went on up to, I put in for the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg. Figure I'll get close to SF and I'll work it out from there. Still had SF on the mind. I had a lot more hurdles I had to go through because they weren't taking second lieutenants and I didn't have my degree completion yet. But I eventually got through all that, and I finally showed up at Fort Bragg years later, 34 years old, going to the Q course, and had a lieutenant colonel come in and sit all the officers down and said, welcome. I want to let you guys know you're not going to the Q course I went through. We're starting something brand new we're going to call selection and assessment. And it's going to be harder. It's going to be a lot harder. And we're going to try out a lot of things on you guys, see what works and what doesn't work. And if for some reason you get recycled, you will have to go through selection assessment before you can start again. So, as usual, I managed to walk into the worst possible situation available, but I ultimately got into SF.
Yeah, you said a couple things that I didn't know, and just thinking of how the modern era war, I can't even imagine what Afghanistan would have looked like if we no longer never had an SF. I mean, that was a whole special operations war to begin with. So obviously, that maybe something else would have came out ahead of it or after it. But I can't even imagine just because of the role that they played in Afghanistan. So I didn't know they were ever considering getting rid of SF. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, General Abrams was one of the guys who really hated SF. A lot of the chain of command from Vietnam, well, they didn't have control over them. Some of the things about SF that still worry conventional commanders is that you get 12 guys, sometimes fewer than that, and you're going to send them out on a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And they're so far out that not only is no one going to be able to help them, but you don't really know what they're doing out there, especially in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
When I went in, we had the HF radios, and once a week, sometimes once a month, we'd set up the radio and do a comp shot back to Fort Bragg to let them know we were alive and report on what was going on and get instructions. But it's not like now where they can watch you moving through the room
Yeah.
and tell you to turn left instead of right.
Yeah. Yeah. The technology has definitely changed from then. And I could see that too, just with working with the special operations side, how that might fear some of the conventional commanders that are taking command. And yeah, because it is a different mindset. Everybody's first name basis right now. Relaxed grooming standards. You would never even know that these guys are in the military. They're trained on everything from down to talking to media and how to avoid conversations and topics and everything else. So yeah, it is a whole different world, and it's a side of the military that I'll be honest, I absolutely love. If I could have stayed with the 160th until I retired, I would have. I only left just because of we had changed some things. They opened up a new battalion there at Washington State at Lewis, and they couldn't get anybody to volunteer, so they had to open it up and made it DA select for a short period. Part of the agreement was they opened up the books and they allowed everybody to see who was there and how long they'd been there and their ranks. And I was an E6 at that time, and we had 3 other E6s. And it takes no time to make rank when you're on that side with all the training and education and everything you get. So I ended up having to leave. They had to make room and give up the overside so they could get crew chiefs and everybody else for Lewis. So I ended up deciding to retire. I was pretty close at that point, and I went overseas for a year and then came back and retired out of Fort Stewart. So yeah, I absolutely love that lifestyle. I did. It was amazing. I have nothing but the utmost respect for all the operators that I worked with and the ones that I didn't, just because I know what the job entails. And a lot of people out there, they really don't. So absolutely, man. So let's get into a little bit about some of the deployments, just some things that you can talk about. Let's talk about how did you, I mean, coming in at this in the 70s, you're saying 1980 you were already close to retirement. It was obviously you're at 14, 15 years, something like that. So how did Afghanistan and all these other countries come about? Was you still with SF or had you transitioned to contracting then?
I retired in 1997 with 24 years time of service.
Okay.
And I was a major at that point in time. Wasn't much going on. I'd had 2 ODAs by that time command.
Mm-hmm.
I was in command of Charlie Company, first to first out in Oki for 2 years. It's normally a 1-year tour. We had some special stuff going on. They kept me on for another year until we got that program up and running. And then after that, I was not a CGSC select, 24 years in, major. You know, the odds of ever getting a battalion or going much further were pretty slim. I probably would have been the 3rd major from the left, waiting for enough seniority at USASOC to run the coffee pot.
Yeah.
Might have got lucky, got something special, but you know, never know. So I figured, well, 24 years, I'll go ahead and pull the plug and get out. And then, of course, 3 years after that, 9/11 happened. At that time, I was a contractor working for Army Materiel Command up in Washington, D.C. They hired me on as a threat options analyst. And basically what I did was I'd go around to all the bases, and if I was a terrorist and I wanted to come just mess you up, what would I do and how would I go about it? So I'd tell them, don't tell me anything about the base. I'd get on the internet, see what I could find out, and then I'd build a target folder. And we used the old Carver matrix. They had another one called M-Sharp, used those to pick out targets. And at that time, before 9/11, everything was tell the Army story, let everybody know what we do, how important we are. We got to open ourselves up to the public, quit hiding behind fences. So it was easy pickings. I'd sit at home with a beer in front of the computer and build the target folder before we ever left. And when I got there, I'd just walk around and validate it. And then I'd throw it up. And invariably, we get big round eyes this is what I'd do, man. I'd go down here. You got a gun show going on. I can go pick up a Barrett 50 caliber. I can sit up here on this hilltop. I can hit these key points. You're going to be out of business for 1.5 to 2 years because you're doing just-in-time production. You're the only place that manufactures this in the world. And you've only got 5 or 6 people who know how to run the machines. And that'd make everybody scared, but it went completely contrary to what the policy was at the time. Mm-hmm. I gave one brief up at Natick Labs, and they laughed at me. And they said, well, that's all very good, Mr. Brewer, but do you really think that Middle East terrorists are ever going to come to Boston, Massachusetts, and initiate an attack on the United States. So thank you for the briefing. You have a nice day. That was about 2 months before September 11.
Wow.
And I got invited to come right back and give that briefing one more time. And we had a lot more attention to it on that time around.
I bet you did. I bet they were like, okay, this guy knew something. He was trying to give us a heads up, and we didn't listen. So yeah, absolutely. It is, that's something that's some of my listeners may not know, right? You talked about being a major and how hard it was. The promotion system is brutal for officers. If there's nothing going on, which in the 90s, that was the Clinton era, if I'm not mistaken. So the Army had been downsized. Like you said, I was in 97. There was not much going on. It was a 9-to-5 job. And that does not affect NCOs. It doesn't affect our promotion, but it does affect officers because there can only be one number one on the rating system. And then there's 2, 3, 4. And if you don't have the right ratings, you don't have the command experience and everything else, it does make it brutally tough for officers to move up. So I absolutely do get that. It makes perfect sense, especially in such a small, the special ops community is tiny in comparison. So absolutely, yeah, I can see it.
It actually worked out rather well for me, though, because starting out as an officer with 10 years in already, and having been an E7 and having come out of the Ranger Battalion, there wasn't much that I didn't know how to do already as a first and second lieutenant. Even as a captain in the infantry, I already knew the job.
Mm-hmm.
So every rating, I'd get the same response from the rater. Hey, you're a great guy. You're doing great stuff. But I got to save that one block for the guys who are going to be general. Yeah. So I wouldn't get that. I wouldn't get the jobs that would make you move up. But I would get the jobs that were hard to do, that required somebody with experience. And they generally leave me there for a while. So that's how I got an infantry platoon and then a scout platoon in the 82nd. I got, when I went to SF, excuse me.
No problem.
When I went to SF, SF was just forming as a branch. And they needed officers for the headquarters. They needed officers for recruiting. They needed officers for you name it. So if you came in as an officer for SF in, what was it, 1986, I think it was, 86 or 7. Mm-hmm. When they first went to a branch, you got 6 months of team time. And that was it. You're branch qualified and you're off the team. And now you're going to ROTC or staff or whatever else they had. And most of those guys never went back to a team again. But I was never going to be a general. I got a classified mission to Colombia. Came back from that. We had another classified mission in Panama. I wound up being a team leader for almost 16 months. And they finally remembered me. They were all kinds of upset and demanded I come back up for staff. I had to stay there for 2 years, but then I got done with my staff commitment and they said, well, we're going to make you the HHC commander up here at USSF Command because you did such a great job. And I said, oh, hell no. I want to go back and get another ODA. So, don't you understand what this will do for your career? Yeah, I do. I hadn't got much of a career. I want an ODA. So I got out to Oki and I got my ODA. I stayed there for a little over a year. And then I wound up Assistant 3. And then I got Charlie Company because the ODA I had was in Charlie Company. So then they gave me command of the company. And then we got another special project that nobody wanted to touch with a 10-foot pole and got that off the ground. And I said, well, will you stay here for another year working with this? Because somebody's going to get in serious trouble. And none of us want to be there. So I got another year at that. So I got the fun job. So they left me alone.
Yeah. But I'll be honest, that is the mindset of a lot of the people that are in the operators. Just like I said, if I had any choice at all, I would have never left the 160th. And it does become a point where you are so passionate about the ones that you work with, the people that are around you, and the job and the feeling of purpose that you would give up rank and positions just to stay there and continue to work and do the grind. So I completely get that. That makes perfect sense to me. And maybe it doesn't to some of these other people, but no, I do get it. Um, can you give me an idea? So when you went to Afghanistan, was that with contracting time or was that with military time?
That was contracting. I had a friend that I was with in 10th group that went over to CAG.
Okay.
And when he retired, he came out to KBR and he was head of security for KBR operations. At that time, everybody had been in Afghanistan for about a year and a half. They hadn't really built up the FOBs yet, but they were in the process of doing so.
Yeah.
And he needed somebody new to go over to head up as a security coordinator for KBR ops in Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and Republic of Georgia. So I picked up that job. That was interesting to say the least. You get a bunch of East Texas and Louisiana roughnecks out there in Afghanistan where they're not supposed to have any alcohol. And they did not have a fence around Bagram Air Force Base at that time, let alone HESCOs.
Yeah. Wow.
Disney Road was a dirt road that ran down the middle, and that was the only dirt road. All the rest of them were mined. And we just started building out from there. We built Salerno. We built Kandahar. Shindan hadn't even been set up yet. We went out to recon it, took a look at it. There was only an ODA out there at the time. And that was most of my job because they'd need contractors to do this, that, and the other. So I'd go first. And I'd get out with the ODA and they'd point out, well, we need this here and this here and this here. And I said, okay, well, that's cool. But first, how about we get some of the landmines out of here? How about call it EOD? What landmines? Well, that one over there and that one over there and that one by your right boot. You might want to step over this way a little bit carefully. We're in a minefield. Yeah, dude. So we'd sort that out. And then I'd tell them, said, okay, you want generators and air conditioning and all of this stuff? That's no problem. I can get you the guys, but you're going to have a perimeter, some kind of perimeter that you can control. You got to have a bunker or at least an armored vehicle that these guys can get into if you're starting to get hit. And someone's going to have to be with them that's got a gun all the time they're out here. You give me those three things, a perimeter, overhead cover, and armed security, I'll get your team. And you'd be surprised how many times, especially for the conventional guys, well, you don't need all that nonsense. We've been here for 6 weeks and nobody shot at us once. I said, yeah, okay, but you see that guy over there? Well, yeah, he's the guy we're renting this mud fort we're living in right now. Yeah, he's the local head of the Taliban. How do you know that? Well, if you talk to your S2, they'll tell you. The reason that he's not shooting at you is because you're living in his mud fort and you're renting it from him.
Yep.
Do you get shot at when you go out? Well, yeah, all the time. That's why, because when you come out, he'll shoot at you all day, but he isn't going to mess up his real estate. So you want to build a new fob out there, a click out in the desert. Yes, you are going to have armored vehicles. You're going to have armed troops, and you're going to have to protect it while they're out there working. Now, if you do that, we'll come out. Otherwise, y'all have a nice day.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned Disney because, you know, when the first time I went to Bagram, it was already basically a civilian post. It was contractor heaven, asphalt roads, you know, and I mean, you literally they were saluting when you walked down the street. You would just leave your arm up and just keep walking because there was officers everywhere on Disney. And so it's funny to hear that about how Disney used to be a minefield. And, you know, because that's like one of the most famous roads. I don't know why, but everybody talks about that road on any of the FOBs. I was at Kandahar as it was being built up. And I was at Kandahar right before I retired. And that was a place that just looked like it got forgotten. You know,
Yeah.
it was starting to get built up, and then all of a sudden the UN moved in, and nobody really wanted true command, so they all started doing their own things. It looked like little villages within inside Kandahar, and so it is crazy just to sit here and talk about how the perspectives of people from these different posts have changed, because the posts themselves have changed. And I can't even imagine, you know, it kind of scares me that you're talking to an officer that's not even putting physical security first. That's kind of scary in its own right, you know.
Yeah, but you got to understand that. See, what was it? 2000 was when 9/11 happened, or
Yeah,
2001?
2001.
2001.
Yep.
That first year after that, everybody was happy. The Taliban were gone. I mean, we used to walk around the streets and go down to the bazaar, and there was no big deal. But after about a year and a half, 2 years, that's when the Taliban got reorganized and they started coming back in. So, in fact, I was down in Kandahar uh, when they first started getting some 107s coming in, and then 107 killed one of our KBR guys.
Hmm.
So they sent me down because we had some old Vietnam vets that were working for KBR, and they commandeered sandbags and they were sandbagging the tents just like they did in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And the base commander and the fire chief were just having an absolute fit. They can't do that. Those are our sandbags. And the fire chief was saying, that's a fire hazard. They can't do that. And these guys were saying, well, screw you. I'm not getting killed.
Yeah.
And so they sent me down. I talked to the base commander and I said, look, it's so we never got shot at before, and it did probably will never happen again. I said, no, sir, you really need to talk to your S2 because the Taliban have reorganized and they're moving back. Now you've had a easy ride up till now, but that's coming to an end, and you need to start planning right now to get ready for it. And he was a National Guard, a reservist guy, and he was doing this 6 months ago, and he didn't want to hear it because that required a lot of, just like AMC, everything we've always done before, now we're going to have to change. And he did not want to be the guy to make all the changes.
Yeah.
So what we came up with, they wouldn't let us sandbag in between the tents. So I talked to the guys down there and I said, okay, well, what else have you got around here? What's in all those 40-foot shipping containers that are stacked up over there in that lot? So they're all full of water bottles, all of them. And there was like hundreds of 40-foot containers full of water bottles. I said, all right, here's what we're going to do. You guys get that big old crane thing that you got over there, and you move those over and you stack them around the LSA. And you stack them 2 feet too high and give them about 20 meters out from the tents so there's room to move around them. And if they drop one inside it, that's going to be a bad day. But at least if they drop one close, those water bottles are going to stop all that fragmentation.
Yeah.
And the commander just had an absolute fit. You can't do that. That's my water. Sir, you need to read your contract. Yes, we can. It says right here in the contract that we are obligated to obtain and store water for your use. Now, under the terms of the contract, it is our decision where the water is most appropriately stored under the footprint that you have set out that we control. And we've decided that we like it stacked up around our LSA. You want water, we'll bring you all the water you want, and we'll stack up another container out there. And that's one thing the commanders had a problem with. So they'd come down and more times than once, I'd have a commander say, you don't understand how the command relationship with contractors works. And I'd have to explain to them, no, sir, you don't understand. The DCMA coordinates your contracts. You write down everything that you want. That goes down to your COR. COR makes sure that we meet the standards of the contract, but we do what the contract says, not what you say. And if it comes down to a conflict, you go back up to the DCMA. If you want to change that contract, they'll write it in. But we're here to do what you told us you wanted done, and we're going to do it our way. You have a nice day. And oh man, they just have fits over that.
Oh, I can imagine. You know, just thinking about how the officer community isn't going to be like being told by a civilian, you know. But like you said, how many of those civilians were former military, and how many of them have already been through Vietnam and all of that type of experience that up to that point our young officers didn't have. Um, so they were learning on the fly, and it sucks that they weren't taking advice because it's putting people in jeopardy.
That's one smart thing KBR did was they hired guys like us to be the interface with the military. And man, I spent a lot of time down with the G2 because I still have my TS clearance. I'd go down, and anytime I'd go out, I'd make a point of stopping by, and I'd tell them everything that I saw, everything I heard. This is what's really going on out there.
Yeah.
They appreciated that, so they'd share with me as much as they could share. So when I'd get out to these fobs, the SF guys usually they knew what was going on. There wasn't much I could tell them.
Right.
But the conventional guys, well, like the convoy that went from Bagram into Kabul, you know, once a week that convoy would make the run. And the first time I rode down with them, there's a little E4 MP out there. We had the 2 armored vehicles that would escort our Suburbans. And you go, all right, everybody get in, let's go. Whoa, 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 dude, hang on a minute. What about the brief? What brief? What are you going to do if we get shot at? Well, we'll shoot back. Well, what are we going to do? well, you just stay there and we wait till we come back. Man,
Stay there.
we could do a little bit better than that. And I'd walk them through the security brief. You know, this is what we're going to do if we come under indirect. This is what we're going to do if we come under direct contact. This is what we're going to do for disabled vehicle. And we just run through it. Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that happened every week until their platoon leader showed up one week. And little E4 was out there saying, okay, and now the contractor will give the security brief for the convoy. And the lieutenant said, what? Oh, hell no. And they finally started to get something in place. But you'd run into that all the time. I mean, it was like babes in Wonderland, just wandering out there. And you'd go, dude, you are in the Army, right?
It sounded like he was using the attack by bear theory. You know, let me find somebody that's slower than me, so they don't go after me. You guys just stay right here. You'll be safe. Just chill out. We'll be back.
Yeah, that was it.
Wow, that is funny. Well, so you've had a huge career. You know, you've done things that people only read about and talk about in the movies. What made you decide to transition to being an author and telling the world about your stories?
I got old, and the last time I went to Nigeria, I figured out that, you know, what the hell am I doing climbing up this cargo ladder onto this ship off this little boat that looks like something out of the Humphrey Bogart African Queen story? You know, that it's time to go ahead and hang this up for a bit. And then sitting around the house, you know, there's only so much gardening and fishing that you can do before. So I started telling stories. And the 50th anniversary of the bat came up, and we were swapping stories. And someone said, hey, someone needs to write this down because we're all getting older and no one's ever going to know. So I started writing them down and showing them to some of the buddies. And they're saying, oh, man, you got to publish that. Didn't know anything about publishing.
Yeah.
So I turned into a hobby. And I don't know how much you know about that industry, but the industry is there to make the people who help people print books.
Yep.
And the people who are helping them are the ones who get rich. Now, the people who do the actual writing of the books, not so much.
No, you described it accurately. It's a hobby because you don't usually come out profitable. Even doing it yourself. I self-published a book as well, and but again, you know, and I think this is true for most veterans that they don't write the books necessarily for to get rich.
Yeah.
You know, that none of us thought about, I'm going to get out of the military and just become a full-time professional author. It just, that's an industry that's just not there, like you said, unless you are a printer or a publisher or something like that that is going to get wealthy off of helping you sell books. You know,
That's exactly right. And the first book, Old Scroll Ranger, that's the stories of that first 3 years. And it was the 50th anniversary, so I made those and I got them out to all the guys. And they love that because it's got some pictures from the old days. Their pictures are in it, some of mine. And that gave them a memento that they can hand off to their kids and grandkids. And then that got me started on the second one. That was the SF stories, but most of that was classified. A lot of it was TSSCI level. But I wrote it and I sent it up to DoD pre-publication review and asked them, hey, and I picked a selection out of the ones that I thought were important, nobody knows about, but I thought people would like to know about. Sent it up to them, said, how much of this can I talk about? And it took 6, almost 8 months at pre-publication review because they sent it to Southcom, to Paycom, to the State Department. They all had something to say on that. Yep. JSOC, and came back and they said, well, we're going to have to do it again because they don't agree with one another on what is secret and what's not. So they sent it out again and it came back, and apparently they all threw their hands up in the air and said, what the hell? It's been more than 30 years. You can talk about all of it, but don't use this acronym. Use this one that we just made up. And about Charlie Company, I was not allowed to use those 3 letters. Okay. So they gave me 3 other letters no one had ever heard of. And what's funny is I just found out recently from a buddy that's still in that, hey, for some reason, we're back to those 3 letters. They said we can start using that again. So apparently, after the book was published, they decided, well, it's okay. What the hell? Go ahead. They can call it that.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, a lot of people that start writing about some of their classified stuff, that just adds to the frustration of being an author because it's not a quick process. And I was surprised when you said that you were able to share everything because usually that's not the case. There's usually a lot of changes that come about. And so, you know, my hat's off to you for doing that. And going through that red tape. It's obvious from how you wanted to be an SF guy that you were a I don't quit type person. You were persistent to get to the SF, and so it doesn't surprise me that you were able to get through that red tape as well. So let me ask you this. Obviously, you know, you're the author of both books, but which one's your favorite?
That's a good question. Kind of like your children. I love them all equally. Yeah. The first one is a memento. There's some funny stuff in there. Yeah. And it's basically just about being a soldier. Mm-hmm. The second one, there's some historical events in there that we were told that don't ever talk about this, not ever. Yeah. But I've always felt that there's some things in there that people ought to know about. That because that's what SF does. That's how SF operates, and they do have an impact. And those 1s and 2s and small teams out there are just doing some amazing things that they never get credit for. Yeah. And especially now that we're out of the kinetic phase of all the conflicts. Right. The guys are going to go back more to that. Go out here, do this. For God's sake, don't kill anybody. Because if you do, it's going to show up in the news and everybody's going to hear about it. And we know they all want to try to kill you, but try not to get killed. Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's been a change ever since we started allowing the media to
to be on ground and traveling with the troops. It added another element that handicapped our troops, and a lot of the civilian population just don't understand. You know, combat isn't always about death. You know, it's I always describe it as it's about 20 minutes of adrenaline and 8 months worth of boredom, filled full of jokes and pranks and anything else that you can think of to fill the time. And so a lot of people don't understand there is a lot of funny stuff that comes from. I have stories as well that I just you tell people in the civilian world and they just look at you like in awe. But to me, they were pretty hilarious. So I think that is important, and I think as well as discussing, the things that some of these people did, because again, what our military accomplishes is amazing. And that's where my podcast came in. I just want people that are trying to document their time of service to get the notoriety and get it out there. So in the future, whatever our history books say, there's at least our story is still in print and still on the internet and everything else. I think that's important. I'm glad you did it, and I'm going to make sure that all of the links and everything get posted to Amazon to buy directly. That way, they are getting them directly from you. Um, and I'll also be sharing any of your other links that you've got so that people can reach out if they got questions. Um, I got a couple fun questions for you. So,
Okay.
what is, now I know what our time in the military always said, but what is that one piece of gear that you never deployed without? You had to have it. It had to be that one. What was it?
Oh, that would depend to an extent on where you were going and what you were doing. In the Ranger Bat, especially in the winter, and in Germany, that wool scarf. You
Okay.
never left without that wool scarf because you know how it is. You're sitting there. We're going to go on a 20-25 miler,
Yep.
and we know we're going to be busting our ass. We're going to be it's cold and freezing, but we're going to be sweating the whole time. So you can't get out there in all of your long underwear. You've got to strip down.
Yep.
But you got that wool scarf. You can wrap it around and spread it out over your chest, and you can stay halfway warm while you're waiting to go. And then yank it off. And then when you stop, you can put it on again and keep from going hypothermic. So that wool scarf was, and the whoopee, the poncho liner.
Yep. That's what everybody today would have said is the whoopee.
Yep. Don't leave home without that. I mean, you get a
Oh,
little bit of comfort no matter where you are.
yeah, absolutely. So, what's the most unexpected situation you found yourself in during your career?
There's a story in the book, the second book, about that. Uh, I, my second ODA was what we called a long hair team.
Hmm.
And we'd go out in civilian clothes. Um, can't talk about everything that we did, but one of the things that we did was we would go to the embassies and we'd figure out how to get to the embassy, how to get back out of the embassy in the event the embassy had to be evacuated. So routes and determine all of that. And we'd help them with their NEO plan. And there's other things that we did too, but that's what's in the book. So we got a call and it was all super secret. Don't tell anybody, stay out of this. But then we got a call that they wanted us to go to South Korea because that was in Clinton's administration when they thought the North Koreans were going to invade any day now. So they said, you guys have got to go there and help them with the NEO plan. And I tried to tell them, said, look, number one, we're a classified unit. You don't want anybody to know who we are and what we're doing. We've all got long hair. We're in civilian clothes. And there are people up there who know us and know from other places. We're going to get busted. It's a military, U.S. military base, for God's sake. No, and two, yeah, there's a lot of things we do that contribute to NEO, but we don't know how to do a NEO plan for a whole damn country. I mean, you got generals up there that do that stuff. well, we've already agreed to do it and you're going. So we got there, we got to the embassy, and this is in the book. And number one, the embassy people don't know exactly who we are. So we're getting the brief, and then I'm hoping, well, at least maybe we can stay away from the military. And we've got you an appointment tomorrow with the military to go over there, and they're going to give you a briefing on their NEO plan so that you can come back and brief us and make sure that we know everything that we need to know. Because they weren't talking to the military. They were making plans on their own for 15,000, all the Allied nation extended families.
Yeah.
Bastard already agreed to evacuate all of them and hadn't told the Army. Well, the Army will do what we tell them to. The ambassador's in charge. I said, oh, hell.
Yeah.
So we got over there to the commanding general's headquarters, and they had someone there to brief little Captain Brewer and a sergeant first class that was with me that were the appropriate rank for the diplomats coming from the embassy. And we had a 2-star general giving us the brief and a full colonel making sure our teacups were full and providing us with little cookies while we could get the information. And I'm sweating bullets. So, oh, God, please don't anyone recognize me. I'll never live this down. Someday I may come out of SF. But we got through it, and we went back and briefed the ambassador. And it's kind of a long story, but it is in the book. But we authored the 3-phase NEO plan that came out in national newspapers and the Army Times shortly after that, where they were completely redoing their NEO concept. And it was all just common sense stuff because State Department wasn't talking to the generals.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. That would definitely qualify as an unexpected situation. Absolutely. So, last question: when you're not working, how do you unwind? What is your go-to thing to put the day behind you?
But now?
Yeah. Yep.
I don't work.
Me neither.
It's all unwind. I've got to actually go out and find some work to get into so that I can at least have a break from the unwinding.
There you go. The vacation away from vacation. Absolutely. So, obviously Amazon is one of the spots. Where else can people find your book?
It's for sale in softback and hardback on Amazon. It is on Kindle. I just moved the second book over to Kindle Unlimited. So if anyone has got that subscription, they can read it for free. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's available. If I'm not mistaken, I think Walmart and all of the major vendors have got it in the catalog where you can order it through them.
Okay. And I will go through and get the links for Kindle and a few of those other places as well. So people can find those. So all my listeners, you'll be able to see it on YouTube. The links will be there, and they'll also be on the audio side as well for you to click. And that way, it's not a scam link or a copied book. It's directly from the author. So do you have any causes or any veteran charities that you would like for us to highlight as well?
There's a couple that I'm active with. Rangers for Life program. Okay. When we got out, I made every mistake that you can make when I got out. I was totally unprepared. I had no idea what I was going to do. But there's some great guys. The old retired regimental sergeant major started up the Ranger for Life program, and now they've got counselors in each of the battalions. And they work with those guys really when they get to battalion. You really need to get some college. Here's the programs that you can get into. If you're thinking about getting out, here's things you need to consider: the finances, continued education. They make sure that they're set up for their VA disability before they ever leave service. And Special Forces Association has also got something similar. And they're all set up to help the guys coming out. So anybody that's coming out, go to your unit and see what they've got. And on the Spec Ops side, we've got it covered down pretty well. for the conventional guys, if there's nothing out there, when you get back to your local community, look up a veteran association where you live. If nothing else, go down to the VFW or go down to the American Legion and check in with them. There are folks that can help you, and it's a tough transition.
Yep, absolutely. I believe the Rangers also have the Rangers Association. Night Stalkers have the Night Stalkers Association, and those are all, they do different things to help as well. So, like you said, it is easier on the spec ops side as far as finding the help, because you're getting briefed on these types of things all the time. But the regular Army, there isn't a lot of associations that are known, because you travel from unit to unit to unit, and so the VFW is a great resource to get some help and advice from your fellow soldiers. Real quick, last message. If you were talking to a young person that wants to go in the military right now, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Challenge yourself. Don't go in with the attitude of, well, I'm not going to try that because I don't think I could. But by the same token, if there's something specific that you want to do, go for that. If you're technology inclined, by all means, the services have got some great technology opportunities for folks who want to do that. If you're a knucklehead like I was and you want to jump out of airplanes and blow things up and run around in the woods, sign up for Rangers. Go to selection assessment for special forces. Reach for the stars, man, because if you don't, it may be hard to get there later, and you're burning time while you're waiting on it. And if you go and you don't make it, okay, you're going to wind up back down where you probably would have wound up by enlisting for something easier anyway.
Yeah.
So have faith in yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Mr. Brewer, I appreciate you coming on the show. You've got some fascinating stories and some great wisdom for our young troops. If you got any last closing words or anything, feel free.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be out here. I hope you all enjoy the stories in the books. There's some good ones.
Absolutely. All right. Well, if you don't mind hanging out, we'll throw the outro video in, and then I'll be right with you. All right.
Okay, sounds good.